Good evening, fellow sponsors and award winners. Kia Motors South Africa is honoured to continue our involvement with the ABSA Jewish Achievers Award, and specifically our sponsorship of the Community Service Award. Community involvement is an intrinsic value of the Kia brand. This global ethos transfers to our local business, which is South African owned and managed. Our Korean principles lead by example, most notably through the Kia Motors Corporation's Green Light project. This global social mobility program started in 2012, and it aims to improve access to some of the key things in this world: healthcare, education, and employment for disadvantaged communities in Africa. More crucially, it seeks to empower local communities to improve mobility and self-sufficiency in order to enable them to challenge and overcome their obstacles. So far, Green Light projects have resulted in the successful establishment of 5 schools. You can clap as I pause. A healthcare center, a number of mobile clinics, and an auto mechanic training center. We follow this example in South Africa. It's a process that has been driven locally by my predecessor, Ray Levine. Needs no introduction. Ray is a former Jewish Achiever Award winner. He couldn't be with us this evening, unfortunately. He sends his best to everybody. In some instances, these projects were focused on empowerment through sport. In others, the empowerment was through education. And in some, it has been about making a tangible and immediate difference to one person's life. An example even happened yesterday of one of those. As a company, but also as a group of people with a shared vision and passion, we have an exceptional example to follow, and we remain committed to these projects that focus on the upliftment of people, increased access to education, and the eradication of poverty. So on to the special award. Whether through unique life experience, a special ability to connect with people, or both, some people have the opportunity to effect profound change or inspiration in the lives of others. We applaud tonight's winner for having and using both of these gifts in service to their community. We extend our heartfelt congratulations to the recipient of this year's Kia Community Service Award, Don Kraus.
I was born in Holland, in a town called Schiedam, which is famous for the Bols gin. They gradually introduced anti-Jewish legislation. The first one that I knew about was in 1941, when I had to leave my school because I was Jewish. Not long after that, Jews were forced to wear the yellow star with the word Jood written on it. Then there were curfews. You couldn't be around after about 8 or 9 o'clock. They put us onto a train, passenger train, and they sent us to a camp near the German border called Westerbork. And we were in that camp for about 1.5 years. Westerbork was a transit camp. There were 140,000 Jews in Holland. Of those 140,000, 107,000 were sent to Westerbork, which in due course passed them on to the death camps. Of those 107,000, only 5,450 returned. 2 days after my father was sent to Buchenwald, we were sent to the Ravensbrück camp in Germany, 80 kilometers north of Berlin. With the death march, we were evacuated at night. We didn't know it at the time, but they marched us during the night and part of the following day for 53 kilometers. No food, no water. If you couldn't keep up, you were shot. You were literally stepping over the bodies of the people that had been shot in the column ahead of you. We were very close to the front line. They were shooting all around us. There were planes being shot down overhead. We were so demoralized. We were so weak. We were so exhausted that nobody even tried to stop them. We just let them walk. I don't even remember anybody cursing them. These are the blokes that have been shooting us. We just lay there on the ground and watched them go. I belong to organizations that send survivors to lecture at schools and also to answer questions that are asked through the press.
Don Kraus speaks at schools and to other groups for many, many years. Many more years than other survivors that started to speak only recently. He is really like Elie Wiesel and Primo Levi that started to speak early on in their life. He does it in his own time, free of charge, and he speaks to thousands and thousands of people throughout South Africa.
Having Don Kraus as a Holocaust survivor speaking to us about the Holocaust has really given us an understanding of what it was really about, and his personal testimony gives us a true feeling of what we learn about in textbooks.
Don Kraus has been visiting the King's College for more than 20 years. He has inspired both teachers and students alike. His message is very, very clear. 5 words, this I do not do, and that is said in context of being an upstander, standing up against the evils of an event like the Holocaust, through which he suffered. We are so grateful to him for the impact he's had on our lives.
The Holocaust is the story about 6 million people, innocent people, men, women and children, being murdered by people that were influenced, indoctrinated. Ordinary people that were influenced and indoctrinated in seeking self-preservation, to dehumanize them, and then to kill them. And that the message is, the message that Elie Wiesel expounded in 4 words, to avoid this, don't dehumanize people.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, after what I've heard before me today, I feel I shouldn't be here at all. But it is true that I've waited about 87 years for this. Not that I expected to get some kind of an award. I did the things that I felt in the light of being a Holocaust survivor had to be done when necessary. The youth had to be taught, had to be told what went on. Our 6 million Kadoshim had to be remembered. I remember an occasion many years ago when there was a commemoration for a very remarkable person called Anne Frank. Those of you who have read her book and realize the age that she was and the understanding, the wisdom that she brought into those memoirs, know that they were dealing with somebody very, very special. So, some time ago, an ex-classmate of hers came out here and spoke on Anne Frank. And I was asked to join her on the platform. And I listened to her speaking about Anne Frank, who I've got the greatest of admiration for, as I think we all should have. But she spoke Anne Frank, Anne Frank, Anne Frank. Then they came to me and they said, look, you've got 10 minutes. I know that 1.5 million Jewish children were murdered during the Holocaust, including many relations of mine. There'd be no mention of them. And so I said to the person who told me I had 10 minutes, I said, I don't need 10 minutes. I said, 1 minute will do. And I got up and I said, there were 1.5 million Anne Franks. I had been told by a man who was in charge of the archives in Jerusalem at Yad Vashem that he knew of at least 30 other diaries which in his opinion were just as good as Anne Frank's. I mentioned this to the Dutch representatives of the Anne Frank organization. They very much doubted that it was possible. But I felt that to just speak about Anne Frank was wrong. 1.5 million Jewish children of whatever potential had been murdered during that Holocaust. I was taken at the age of 12 to the Westerbork transit camp. From there, every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, 1,000 Jews were put on transport in cattle trucks. Their destination was no secret. Boldly displayed in placards on those cattle trucks were the words of the places they were being sent to. Auschwitz, Sobibor. In Auschwitz, if you were extremely lucky, you had a 20% chance of survival for longer than 5 months. In Sobibor, there were virtually no survivors. You arrived there, and 2 hours later, you were gone. I found myself being transferred from Westerbork to 3 other concentration camps. The first was Ravensbrück, camp for women only. Established in 1939, and out of the 134,000 women that went to Ravensbrück, 50,000 died without there being a gas chamber, which gives you some idea of the conditions. From Ravensbrück Women's Camp, I was sent to the Ravensbrück Men's Camp when I turned 14. Also established about the same time, 1939. By the time I got there were about 5,000 inmates, and before them, 20,000 had died without a gas chamber. When the Russian front approached, we were transferred to a camp called Sachsenhausen. Sachsenhausen had 200,000 inmates, of which 96,000 died, men and women. My job there was, at the age of 14, to remove the corpses from the barrack every morning. By that time, I knew that I was 14. I also knew that I wasn't a child anymore. Again, when the Russians approached, we were put onto a death march. A death march means that you march for 30 kilometers a day. You're given a pittance to eat once in 3 days. By a pittance, I mean a slice of bread or a boiled potato. And also once in 3 days, something to drink. This all took place 3 weeks before the end of the war. We were marched through a German village. The whole village turned out to watch this circus. I was there with another Dutch boy, a little bit younger than I was. And while we were marching there, I heard a German child standing on the pavement with his mother call out and say, "Mother, those are children." And I'll never forget the answer of the mother, "No, those are bandits." The 11-year-old boy was with me, looked like 6. When he could not march anymore, one man picked him up and carried him. Me, they had to drag. But the answer of that mother gave me quite some pause for thought. She didn't have to answer. That the war was lost, everybody knew. 1 week later after that happened, 2 weeks after that happened, the war was over. Did she really believe that that boy, 11-year-old boy who looked like a 6-year-old and could be carried like an infant, was a bandit? Or was her remark representative of the German population as a whole? When I came to South Africa, I decided after a while that when I became aware that there was an organization in this town established in 1951 by Holocaust survivors, and I only found out about this in 1985, so I decided to join them. And I went to one meeting, I went to another meeting. We had a very forceful lady who was the secretary, and I heard her allocating schools, Jewish schools, to various survivors. You go to Linksfield, King David Linksfield, and talk there. Another one, you go to King David's Linksfield Victory Park. One, you go to Pretoria and speak to a college there. And it amused me. And I asked this secretary, I said, surely you're preaching to the converted. Shouldn't somebody be speaking at the German school? And she looked at me, she says, you think so? Well, you go there. So I went there. I founded that German school in 1985 here in Johannesburg. Was run by Nazis. Now, this isn't just in my own prejudiced opinion, because later on, when I went to the German school in Pretoria, I met a teacher who, ironically enough, was named Frau Schindler. And she had been a teacher at this German school here, at Mill Park. And she confirmed that it was run by Nazis. Before I started speaking there to the children, I spoke to the headmaster. And I asked him, I said, do you teach the Holocaust? Oh, yes. And we discussed how he was teaching the Holocaust. But when I'd finished speaking, he said to me, if I'd have known what you were going to say, you would never have come through the front door. It took another 20 years with the help of the Goethe Institute before another Holocaust survivor spoke at the Deutsche Schule in Mill Park. On this death march of ours, during the 3 weeks before the end of the war, a minimum of 500 were shot. There are other statistics that run into the thousands. Let's be conservative. Let us say it was 500. On the death march we saw, I'm talking about as a child, we saw people shot right in front of us. By that time, upset as I was beyond crying. As I say, my job had been to remove corpses from barracks at the age of 14. But not very long ago, I went to St. Stithians and I spoke there as a Holocaust survivor. And one little girl in the front row, when I described how I'd seen people shot right in front of me, she said, how did you feel? At the time, I felt nothing. I was beyond feeling. On that occasion, in front of those little children in that school, I broke down. And those little girls had to watch a man in his 70s stand there and weep. When I speak at a school, I use a certain format. I've usually got about a half an hour to speak. Don't worry, I won't speak here for a half an hour. I use an English saying, I have 6 honest serving men who taught me all I knew. Their names are what, and where, and when, and why, and how, and who. 5 of those words you will get an answer to in any bookshop here in Johannesburg. There's one word there, one question, why, which is problematical, and for most people is very difficult to answer. My attempt at answering is to take the dictum of our mentor, Eli Wiesel, who concluded in a few words what his feelings were about the Holocaust. And he said, don't dehumanize people. What he didn't say, but what is implied is that if you try and dehumanize people, you first have to dehumanize yourself. Many years ago, I joined a debating society called the Arnold Smith Public Speaking Union. It is no longer in existence. It was started during the First World War. They taught me various things. One was to stand up, to speak up, and to shut up. Well, thank you for listening.